Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. It's Brittany here with another video to help you guys live a happy, healthy, awesome life in a wheelchair. And today I'm answering the question, why the heck are we always cold as people with spinal cord injuries? Somebody asked me this question a while ago and asked if I would do a video on temperature regulation after a spinal cord injury, and I've always been curious about the mechanisms that control temperature regulation and why they get so wonky after a spinal cord injury. So I'm gonna answer that question. I did some digging, and luckily I have a degree in chemistry and biology, and I'm a teacher, so I love doing this kind of stuff. So I spent yesterday sort of going through all of the literature and figuring out what all of the pathways are for temperature regulation, and then how they're affected in spinal cord injury. And I made a handy dandy little flow chart here that you guys can't even really see. I spent so much time on it, and then I'm like, oh, you can't even see it on camera. So I'm gonna try taking a picture of this and then referring to it when I'm talking about the different mechanisms as I go through the explanation. So first thing that we're going to talk about is how temperature regulation happens in a non-paralyzed individual. And then I'm going to talk about which parts of the sort of mechanism in temperature regulation is affected after a spinal cord injury and how it affects the body and sort of what we can do about it. So let's get started with temperature regulation in a regular non-paralyzed individual. What happens to keep our body in the proper sort of temperature range? So the first thing that happens is our skin receptors. We have heat receptors and cold receptors on our skin all over our body, and those get activated. Basically, they're just like the monitoring system for knowing what temperature your body is in. When those receptors get activated, they send the messages from your skin to an area of your brain called the hypothalamus, which is a tiny little area sort of in the center of your brain. And it is basically the thermostat for your whole body. It is monitoring the temperature, and it can keep your temperature really tightly regulated within a very small range, about 0.6 of a degree it keeps it within. And it can do that as long as the ambient temperature is between 13 degrees Celsius and 60 degrees Celsius, which is a giant range. And these temperature regulation sort of mechanisms are what your hypothalamus uses in order for your body to heat itself up or cool itself off, so that you don't change the internal temperature of your body. So once your hypothalamus gets those messages from the skin receptors, then it's going to decide, is it too hot or is it too cold? And whether it's too hot or too cold, basically three things happen just in opposite directions. The first thing that happens is your sympathetic nervous system gets either activated or inhibited. So something happens with your sympathetic nervous system. The second thing that happens is you initiate a either shivering response or a sweating response. And then the third thing that happens is your hypothalamus sends messages to your cerebral cortex, which is like the thinking part of your brain, that allows you to make decisions about your own behavior. So you're either going to be like, oh, I need to find something cool, or I need to go find heat. You're gonna change your behavior, or hopefully you're gonna change your behavior in order to help your body stay a proper temperature. So basically that's the three things that happen. Sympathetic nervous system either gets activated or inhibited, you sweat or you shiver, and you get your cerebral cortex gets activated so that you either do cold-seeking behaviors or heat-seeking behaviors. So now let's talk about the individual pathways for each one. So let's go into the hot first. So if your hypothalamus gets a message that your body is getting too hot, what happens? So again, I said the first thing that happens is your sympathetic nervous system gets activated. And in this case, when you're too hot, your sympathetic nervous system gets inhibited. So your sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight portion of your nervous system. And when it gets inhibited, a couple of things happen. The first one is that your blood vessels dilate. So that means that they get bigger. And when they get bigger, it increases the surface area that your blood has on the actual blood vessel, and it gets your blood sort of closer to the surface of your skin, and that increases heat transfer by 8 times. So you want to lose heat from your body tissues as fast as possible, and dilating the blood vessels is one of the ways that your body does that. The next thing that happens when your sympathetic nervous system gets inhibited is your metabolism slows down. So cellular metabolism is the process that your body uses in order to make energy for your body in each individual cell. And when that happens, heat is sort of a byproduct of the chemical reaction that makes energy. and we don't want any more heat to be made. So your body is going to slow down your metabolism so that excess heat isn't being created from your energy creation. So those are the two things that happen when your sympathetic nervous system gets inhibited when you are too hot. Then again, like I said before, your body is going to sweat, which is again going to increase heat transfer because of evaporation and all of the good stuff that happens when you have a wet body. And then the third thing that happens is your cerebral cortex gets activated, telling your behavioral area in your brain to initiate cold seeking behaviors. You need to find a cool area or shade or something that's going to cool down your body faster than what your temperature regulation mechanisms can manage. So those are the three things essentially that happen when you get too hot. Now what happens when you get too cold? So when you get too cold, it's exactly the same thing, but opposite. So your sympathetic nervous system gets activated. So this time your fight or flight sympathetic nervous system gets activated instead of inhibited. And when it gets activated, your blood vessels constrict. So last time they got bigger, this time they are constricted. And when your blood vessels constrict, it reduces the amount of blood flow to the peripheral areas of your body, like your hands, your arms, your legs, your feet, all those things, because it's conserving heat for your internal organs, like your heart, your brain, all that kind of stuff. And it's going to reduce the transfer of heat because it doesn't want heat to be lost to your skin. And it wants to save that heat for your core, essentially. And then the other thing that happens is your metabolism increases. So when you're cold, your body wants to have excess heat. And when you're doing cellular metabolism, heat is a byproduct. So it's going to increase your metabolism a little bit. And just doing that, it's going to increase your metabolism a little bit. And the metabolism increase that is responsible, the metabolism increase that your sympathetic nervous system is responsible for increases your metabolism by only 10 to 15%, which isn't enough usually in order to generate enough heat if you are really cold. So we have to do something else, and that something else is shivering. And shivering is essentially just a way for your body to increase your metabolism even more. And when you start shivering, your metabolism goes up a lot. So your metabolism when you're shivering goes up 4 to 5 times, which is crazy. So imagine that your resting metabolism is say like 1,000 or 1,200 calories in one day. While you're shivering for that short amount of time, it goes up 4 to 5 times. So if you shivered for a whole day, you would burn through like 5,000 calories instead of 1,000 calories. So it is your body's way of just generating excess heat. And then the third thing, again, is your cerebral cortex, which is the thinking part of your brain, gets activated so that you initiate heat-seeking behaviors. You want to find a warm place, put a coat on, whatever it is. So those are basically the temperature regulation mechanisms that a normal, able-bodied person's body would go through if they were either hot or cold. And now I'm going to talk about which parts of those are affected by spinal cord injury. So the first one that is affected by spinal cord injury is your skin receptors. Your skin receptors can only send messages from your skin to your spinal cord and up to your brain that way. And if you have a spinal cord injury, your skin receptors are still active. You'll still get goosebumps. It'll still feel cold. But they're going to send messages to your spinal cord, and your spinal cord is trying to send messages to your brain, but it's not going to make it up there. So your hypothalamus is just plugging away thinking that you are perfectly fine. And so it is a hard time keeping the thermostat sort of at a good temperature because it's not getting all of the information it needs in order to click it on and off. So that's the first thing that's affected. And then the second thing that's affected is the control that your hypothalamus has over your body. So even if it does sort of get the message, oh, I'm too cold, which it sometimes will get because you have plenty of receptors above your level of injury still, then it's going to try and initiate all of these temperature regulation controls, and it can't send them because it has to go through your spinal cord in order to get messages out to your muscles to start sweating and shivering and all of that stuff, and it's just not going to get past your level of injury. So skin receptors are affected, the hypothalamus control is affected, And then the third thing that is largely affected is the sympathetic control that you have all over your body. So that sympathetic nervous system that I was talking about, it's totally affected after a spinal cord injury because the outflow of your sympathetic nervous system is only done through T1 to L1 nerves in your spinal cord, coming out of your spinal cord, largely anyway. And so if you have a spinal cord injury that is higher than T1, your sympathetic nervous system is essentially not switched on or off using from your hypothalamus in this sort of whole flow of how it regulates your temperature. So if you have a spinal cord injury that is lower than T1, you'll get some of that sympathetic outflow, but you're not going to get all of it. And when I was reading, it basically said that the most temperature regulation only really starts to get affected above T6. I definitely know I'm T6. I'm like borderline T6, and I do have issues with temperature regulation. And for me, my issue is not necessarily that I don't have temperature regulation, it's that it's kind of slow. So I will be freezing for a really long time, and then all of a sudden I will be hot, and I'll be hot for a really long time. So it's like there's like a lag in my temperature regulation mechanism. It's not that it doesn't happen, it just doesn't happen as fast as it used to. So all of the areas essentially are affected. All of the temperature regulation mechanisms are essentially affected by spinal cord injury, depending on what level you have. So if you have a spinal cord injury, essentially sweating is only going to happen below your level or above your level of injury. Shivering is only going to happen above your level of injury. And whatever control your hypothalamus has, it's only going to control above your level of injury. So if you're a very high level quad, then temperature regulation is essentially nil and you can't sweat at all, almost entirely at all. So as a quad, you have to be very careful, especially in the heat, because if you are cold, you can obviously put more clothes on, bundle up, that kind of thing. But if you're hot, you have a really hard time cooling yourself down because you don't have the sweating mechanism, you don't have the sympathetic nervous system activation that slows down your metabolism and all of that stuff. So being hot can be really dangerous as a quadriplegic. So really the only thing that we still have control over largely as somebody with a spinal cord injury when we are a higher level injury is our cerebral cortex, which is our like voluntary behaviors essentially. So we have to be more mindful of our temperature and make sure that we are making plans so that we don't get stuck in a situation where we're going to be too hot or too cold. If we're going out in the sun, we have to make sure that we have hats on. We make sure we have spray bottles to cool ourselves down to mimic the sweating, all of those kinds of things. And if we're going out in the cold, we have to make sure that our legs stay warm. All of the things that, you know, we would normally not really think about if we were able-bodied because we have these sophisticated temperature regulation mechanisms that are keeping our body warm even when we're not really thinking about it or trying to. So that is temperature regulation. I hope it made sense to you guys. It actually is pretty like simple once you look at it. It's just like any other thing that comes from your brain. It's affected, and because we don't really have our thermostat intact, we don't have all of the controls at our disposal like we once did. Okay, if you have any questions about temperature regulation, please put them in the comments and I will try to answer them. I will throw in here too that there are local temperature regulation mechanisms. There's spinal reflex sweating. So some people are like, I do sweat, I just sweat below my level of injury and it's not in response to temperature extremes. So we do have spinal reflex sweating that's still sort of intact, but whether that actually helps us in a actual situation where we're too hot is really questionable, and the literature is really all over the place. So it's not really something that has been shown to be an effective form of temperature regulation post spinal cord injury. It's actually just something that's like spasticity. It's kind of more annoying where you sweat for no reason and for odd for odd reasons instead of what you would actually normally have sweat for. Maybe if you have like a bruise or a broken bone or something, that will initiate your spinal reflex sweating. So you do have some local temperature regulation responses that are still intact, but they're generally not very helpful after spinal cord injury. And of course, we do have certain things like goosebumps and all of that kind of stuff that still manage to work below our level of injury, because obviously our hypothalamus isn't going to kick in this whole cascade of responses if it's just our foot that's cold for a little while because we have it out of our shoe or something. So this is really just if our whole body temperature is starting to get cold or hot. These hypothalamic, that's what it is, hypothalamic thermoregulation sort of kicks in, but the local ones will still kick in if you have a spinal cord injury. They're just not super helpful. So I just wanted to throw that in there because some people might be like, but wait, I do sweat below my level of injury, or other things like that still kind of occur, but they're more like spasticity. They're just sort of like wayward reflexes that don't really know how to manage themselves afterwards. Anyway, yes, if you have questions about temperature regulation post spinal cord injury, or even just comments about what your sort of experience is with temperature regulation with your spinal cord injury, because we're all different. Even if you want to throw in there how you manage being in the heat as a quad, anything that might be helpful to other people that are coming to watch this video. I love when the comments become a source of information too, so that when somebody comes, they just have to read and learn from more than just me, because, I don't know everything. Okay, that is really all I got for you guys today. I will catch you on another video. If you have any other video suggestions with things that you'd like to learn about spinal cord injury, then throw them my way, because I really like to learn about this stuff and I like to try and teach you. I don't know whether I do a good job of it, but I like to try. So yeah, throw them my way if you have any other suggestions. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, guys. If you are still watching and you want to join my Patreon, you can go to the link in the description of this video. It is just $2 a month and you get all of my videos ad-free and early. And if you sign up for the $10 level, you get to do Zoom Hangouts with me every 3 months where we get to know each other better. And that's my favorite part of being a content creator, is engaging with you guys. So I would love to grow that group and make it a really fun, interactive experience for my subscribers. So if you want to go and sign up for that, you can head to the link in the description of this video. See you there.